Brasilia, August 26, 2025. Inside the presidential palace, the air is thick with tension. Ministers gather around a long wooden table, their eyes fixed on the man at the center of power, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Wearing a simple cap embroidered with the phrase, "Brazil belongs to Brazilians," Lula leans forward, his voice steady but charged. What unfolds is more than a cabinet meeting. It is a declaration of sovereignty, a challenge to foreign pressure, and a direct accusation of betrayal within Brazil's own political class. For months, relations between Brasilia and Washington have been strained. The United States, long considered both a partner and a rival, has recently moved to revoke visas for key figures in Lula's administration, among them Justice Minister Ricardo Lewandowski and Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. De Moraes is the judge presiding over the explosive trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who faces allegations of coup plotting. The visa revocations are only the latest in a series of punitive gestures from Washington. Yet to Lula, the implications run far deeper. The US is positioning itself not as an ally, but as a master. As Lula begins to speak, his words cut through the air with sharp defiance. And there's the issue of the latest development, he declares, which is the United States government acting as if it were the emperor of the world. The phrase is heavy with history. It summons memories of past centuries when empires dictated the fates of nations, when sovereignty was an illusion, and when Brazil itself was a colony. To Lula, America's actions echo those old dynamics, treating Brazil not as a partner, but as a subordinate to be disciplined. He sharpens his point further. We are willing to sit at the table on equal terms. What we are not willing to accept is being treated as if we were subordinates. We will not tolerate that from anyone. This is Lula's line in the sand. Brazil, he insists, will negotiate, will engage, will even compromise, but never as a vassal, equality or nothing. The president pushes his message beyond the political to the symbolic, reminding his audience that Brazil has long abandoned the idea of rulers above the people. If we liked emperors, Brazil would still be a monarchy, Lula says pointedly. We don't want that anymore. We want this country to be democratic and sovereign, a republic, which is what we've learned to build. The words strike at the heart of Brazil's national identity. This is not just about diplomacy, it is about the very form of government Brazilians chose for themselves, a republic born from resistance and reaffirmed through decades of struggle. But then Lula turns from the external to the internal, and here his tone grows darker, angrier. He speaks not of Washington, but of Brazilians themselves, of the former president's family. With controlled fury, Lula tells his ministers, what is happening today in Brazil with the former president's family and the behavior of his son in the United States is possibly one of the greatest betrayals a homeland can suffer from its own children. This betrayal, Lula explains, stems from reports that Jair Bolsonaro's son has been lobbying in the United States, lobbying not to promote Brazil's interests, but to undermine its judiciary, its institutions, and its government. At a time when Bolsonaro faces accusations of conspiring to overturn democratic rule, his son's actions abroad are, in Lula's eyes, an extension of that same threat, an attack on Brazil's sovereignty disguised as diplomacy. The president's condemnation intensifies. There is nothing more serious than an entire family supporting a son, a citizen who should already have been expelled from the Chamber of Deputies, who incites another state against the Brazilian nation with lies and hypocrisy. It is an extraordinary charge that the Bolsonaro family is not merely in opposition, but in active collusion with foreign powers to destabilize Brazil itself. The chamber is silent as Lula speaks. His ministers sit listening, some taking notes, others shaking their heads in disbelief. But Lula's words are meant for a wider audience. They are directed not only at those in the room, but at the people of Brazil and at Washington. This latest escalation comes against the backdrop of Bolsonaro's ongoing trial, a proceeding that has gripped the nation. At its core lies a fundamental question: did the former far-right president plot to overturn democracy? For many Brazilians, the answer is already clear. For others, the case is politically charged. And now, with Bolsonaro's son accused of lobbying abroad, Lula frames the issue not just as justice, but as loyalty to the nation. To understand the weight of Lula's accusations, one must consider Brazil's long and complicated relationship with the United States. For decades, Washington has exerted immense influence over Latin America, often treating the region as its strategic backyard. From Cold War interventions to trade disputes, the story has been one of unequal power. Lula, who rose to prominence championing the rights of workers and the independence of Brazil, has long bristled at the idea of foreign dominance. His return to office has reignited this theme, and today it is sharper than ever. In his speech, Lula paints the United States as overstepping its bounds, while casting Bolsonaro's allies as willing accomplices in that overreach. The imagery is stark. Foreign emperors on one side, traitorous sons on the other. Against them stands a president who insists that Brazil will remain sovereign, no matter the cost. But the stakes extend beyond rhetoric. Washington's visa revocations have already sent ripples through Brazil's political elite, signalling a willingness to use targeted sanctions against the judiciary. For Lula, this is unacceptable interference in domestic legal matters. For his critics, it is a sign that Brazil risks isolating itself from a critical ally at a time of global uncertainty. The symbolism of the moment is impossible to ignore. Lula, the seasoned politician, speaks in a cap that declares Brazil belongs to Brazilians. It is a simple slogan, but in this context, it becomes a manifesto. The message is not just to Washington, nor just to Bolsonaro's supporters, but to every citizen. Sovereignty must be defended from both external pressures and internal betrayal. As the speech concludes, Lula's defiance hangs in the air. His words resonate like a warning bell, echoing across Brasilia and beyond. For supporters, it is a bold defense of democracy and national pride. For critics, it risks pushing Brazil further into confrontation with its most powerful partner. But one thing is clear, Lula has framed this struggle not as a political dispute, but as a patriotic duty. By calling Bolsonaro's son's actions one of the greatest betrayals a homeland can suffer, he has elevated the moment into the realm of national crisis. In this framing, to oppose him is not merely to dissent, it is to betray. And so, as Brasilia settles back into its rhythms, the echoes of Lula's voice linger. Brazil's future, its sovereignty, and its place in the world are once again at the centre of a storm, one that pits loyalty against betrayal, independence against subordination, and a republic's dignity against the shadow of empire.
De retorno ao continente africano. Depois eu vou me inteirar e passar para vocês, sabe, a epopeia que um homem de 91 anos pretende fazer. E a ministra, a companheira Gleisi Hoffmann, e o Sidônio, que vai falar. É uma reunião, depois eu sei que o companheiro Alckmin vai fazer uma viagem muito importante. Na verdade, eu acho que a preocupação maior de todos eles agora é quem vai ficar com a dívida da guerra. Quem vai ficar com a dívida da guerra, porque alguém vai ter que tentar ajudar a recuperar o que está a se rearmar outra vez. A União Europeia aprovou 800 bilhões de euros, sabe? E todo dia mais gente morre, todo dia crianças que estão com fome, aparecem na mídia, crianças totalmente esqueléticas, sabe, atrás de comida, e são assassinadas como se estivessem em guerra. Que o Brasil faz questão de defender. Esses são assuntos importantes que estão na pauta. Eu quero comunicar à imprensa que esse homem aqui, aquele homem ali que é o Haddad e aquele que é Mauro Vieira, estão 24 horas por dia à disposição de negociar com quem quer que seja o assunto que for, sobretudo na questão comercial. E tem a questão da última novidade, que é a posição do governo dos Estados Unidos, que tem agido como se fosse o imperador do planeta Terra. Estamos dispostos a sentar na mesa em igualdade de condições. O que não estamos dispostos é sermos tratados como se fossem subalternos. Isso nós não aceitamos. De ninguém. De ninguém. Se a gente gostasse de imperador, o Brasil ainda seria monarquia. A gente não quer mais. A gente quer, sabe, esse país democrático, soberano, republicano, que é o que nós aprendemos a construir. Mas é o seguinte, o que está acontecendo hoje no Brasil, com a família do ex-presidente e com o comportamento do filho dele nos Estados Unidos, é possivelmente uma das maiores traições que uma pátria sofre de filhos seus. Não existe nada que possa ser mais grave do que uma família inteira ter um filho custeado pela família, um cidadão que já deveria ter sido expulso da Câmara dos Deputados, insuflando, com mentiras e com hipocrisias, um outro Estado contra o Estado Nacional do Brasil.